So then we have this story of people confined to civilian life, unable to vent their need for cruelty on other people, so they do it on themselves. This all sounds bad, but for Nietzsche, it's very important. And it's not that he thinks it's positive, but there are positives that come out of it. He talks about bad conscience as a sickness, but a sickness like pregnancy, right? So all the while that he's talking about how humankind has been made ill with bad conscience, at the same time, this is the condition for some of the things that he cares about. He talks about the human soul becoming interesting as well as evil when it splits and turns against itself. And one of the things that Nietzsche thinks that all of this requires is a divine audience. So he thinks that this whole play, one of the things that we need is to feel that our lives are significant. And if we've turned this suffering on ourselves, if we're inflicting suffering on ourselves, we can't just be doing that just in order to inflict suffering. At least we can't admit to ourselves that we're just scratching ourselves in order to suffer. We need to give significance to our suffering. One of the themes in Nietzsche's work is that the thing that's really intolerable to us is not suffering itself, but pointless suffering, senseless suffering, meaningless suffering. That's what we can't cope with. And so we invent this drama of our guilt and our sin, and in order for that drama to make sense, there has to be somebody watching it. And it's at this point that we start to meet God in Nietzsche's story. So one of the questions we might ask, and Christopher Janaway asks it for us, is why guilt? Right? Why do we invent guilt? We could be cruel to ourselves in all sorts of ways. We could be jealousy hurts, right? We could develop a taste for jealousy in order to hurt ourselves. Anger isn't comfortable. Anger feels bad. Why guilt rather than anger and jealousy? Well, one answer is that guilt grows out of the whole, has a kind of material basis in trade and debt. And the other is that to do with the will to power, that guilt at least gives us a sense of power and significance over our own lives, whereas anger and jealousy are emotions of helplessness. Whereas at least with guilt, we are the agents of our own spiritual condition. One critical note that you might pick up is that Nietzsche claims with this debt story to be driving right back to the start of human moral development. So the legal condition of being in debt one person to another is supposed to be primitive. It's supposed to be the kind of cultural, institutional beginnings out of which guilt emerges. The trouble is that being a legal subject, having the legal status of a debtor, is not that primitive, really. In order to be in debt in that sense, you have to have a functioning state. You have to have a system of restorative justice. There needs to be a magistrate who will order you to have a pound of flesh cut off as a penalty for the non-payment of debt, right? So being in debt requires a level of financial and legal sophistication that puts the whole thing rather further down the track than Nietzsche suggests. So that's one reason for being a bit critical about this. Exactly what is the timeline? All of this has to happen after the development of the institution of legal debt. But in terms of the great sweep of human history, that's quite late.